Street Fighting Evolved. This week's video is on the concept of framing. And the frame that we use is going to be integrated into our dynamic street guard. It's an integral portion of the street guard. You will find frames that are used in many other systems. There's other variations of framing. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu uses frames on the ground. Muay Thai, the long guard setups, a lot of those are framing techniques. So this is a concept that's not, exclusive to the Fighting Evolved curriculum. However, the way in which we use framing is pretty unique. And we use it in a guard that we use out on the street and we use for street self-defense. So as far as our curriculum goes, the dynamic guard, in my opinion, is probably the most important thing for students to learn if you're really looking for that self-defense aspect. So, when we're looking at a dynamic guard or protecting yourself on the street, we can't ignore clinical relevance. So what do we know about street fights? Typically, there's a pre-assault cue. There's something that begins this confrontation. You have an idea it's going to occur, and you've got to prepare yourself. It's at this stage that I have students get their hands up and control center line, force that elliptical path, so at least we have a reference point to start from. Not to mention that every man, woman, and child is predisposed to protect their head and face. This is a very natural movement for us. It doesn't take 10,000 hours of training to cultivate. It's just something that simply happens. What else do we know on the street? The majority of people who want to hit you on the street are headhunters. They're going to try to smash you in the head as hard as they can. The majority of the punches that they lead with is going to be their power side. So if they're a left-hander, they're going to stand back here, and that left rear hand is typically going to be the first punch they throw. If they're a right-hander, it's going to be that right hand. It's typically going to be the first punch they throw. It's generally their rear hand. They're rarely going to the body. So right now, we've eliminated a lot of things we had to worry about, and we're able to focus on that high percentage technique that we're most likely going to see on the street. And typically, these punches are going to be looping, overhand, wild hooks, again, with great intent, trying to knock you out. You need to be able to weather that storm, bridge the gap, and then take control of the situation. This is why we train the dynamic guard so much in our system. Now, I do believe that as a martial artist, you should spend that 10,000 hours, cultivate attributes, work on all the various ranges, wrestle, work on your parries and your slips and your bob and weave and your head movement and all those components. Even when you become proficient with that, it is very risky to use those techniques when you're in an altercation where a guy's throwing 4, 5, 6 bombs at you simultaneously. So today we're going to break down strictly the frame, and over the next couple weeks, I will break down our dynamic guard piece by piece so everybody out there can train it. All right, guys, check it out. All right, guys, we're going to take a look at the frame today. We're going to look at the principles and concepts behind it. You're going to have a good idea of exactly when and why we use the frame. I'd like to thank my partner today, Jimmy Hammer Hands Bustrin, for helping me out again. Again, it's my son's best friend. So, it's a good fella. Thanks for helping me, James.
No problem.
All right, guys, let's talk about the frame. When I say frame, as I said in the intro, the frames are used in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The long guard is an example of a frame. There are a lot of different variations from different systems. This is the framing style that we use for our street self-defense and sort of dealing with the dynamic guard for the street. So when I'm talking about a frame, I'm simply talking about this position where I can touch his face. I may be inside the arm, I may be outside the arm, but it's this basic position where I can touch his face to load up on my next technique. And you're going to see how we get into this frame. The frame can be used inside his hands or it can be used outside the arms. It can be used as a defensive frame where I simply trap his head and throw my technique, or it can be used as an offensive frame where I'm going to strike and follow up. So you're going to see a couple different variations of that. In terms of the principles of the frame, one of the things that allows the frame to work so well is the fact that we have tactile recognition as human beings. And this phenomenon is called stereognosis. He's pre-programmed and he has the proprioception to locate that. The only time stereognosis is not in effect is if you've got a damaged central nervous system, which I think for, James's central nervous system is okay at the moment. So right now we're going to work one technique inside the hook. So Jimmy's going to come with a cross hook. I'm going to frame him right here. If Jimmy does not move, I come with an elbow. If Jimmy throws that same technique and he starts to move back, I'm going to come with the rear hand. So anytime I'm using the frame, whether I follow up with an elbow or a headbutt, or I use a punch, it's predicated on the energy that I'm receiving from my opponent. So that's an example of the frame being used inside of the arm. Now I'm going to work outside of the arm. So Jimmy throws the cross hook. I come out. I can hit, cross, hook. I can also play with rhythm and timing, which is something I encourage my students to do. We'd like to work in a broken rhythm. We'd like to find half beats while we're sparring, whether it's in Muay Thai or street self-defense. So an example of that is Jimmy comes with the same technique. I work out, I hit. I have a half beat shot that I can actually hit his throat, reframe, and come with my cross, hook, cross. Show you another variation is I'm going to actually enter with an elbow penetration. So Jimmy comes with the same thing, and I enter here, I will frame. At this point, if he does not move, I'm going to come with the elbow. Again, if he steps back, now I'm going to just follow with the rear hand. So I'm just going to use a simple step and slide and just track him and continue to strike. So that's a basic introduction of the frame. It's important that you understand the concept and the principles behind it. You can take these simple techniques and begin training them. Over the next couple weeks, I'm going to have a couple different episodes, and we're going to break down all the versions of this dynamic guard so that you can see how it integrates and actually see our training methodology. So James, thanks for helping out, bro. Appreciate it. Guys, questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to post below. Until next week, train hard, train smart, train for a lifetime.